Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Jay Wilson, and you're here hopefully to learn about Domo. Today we're going to talk about how we can use the APIs to create data sets in Domo, as well as upload the data set, upload CSVs into Domo. But we're going to actually take it to 11 because we're going to start out by using the public APIs, developer.domo.com APIs, to just upload our data, append and or replace. To take it a step further, we're going to take a look at using append plus partitioning. But in order to do so, we're going to have to hit the private APIs, the undocumented APIs. So a little bonus there. To take it to 11, though, I'm going to show you three tools that I use regularly to kind of do this API documentation stuff. We're going to take a look at PyCharm for running Python code locally on my computer. We're going to look at Postman, which is really the backbone of really like supporting me in this API work. And we're also going to take a look at how you can reverse engineer the Java CLI. So there's a ton coming up. Stick around. Let's get into it. So for those of you not in the know, developer.domo.com are Domo's public APIs, which are documented. So I can see here, I can create a data set. I just send a post request against this API, notice api.domo.com. And I just send this body and I'll create a data set. The only part that's a little bit tricky is this idea of authorization. If you're not familiar with authorization workflows, it's a little bit of a pain to figure out, but the general gist of it is you'll send a query first. You'll send a first request that says, hey, this is my client ID, this is my secret, give me an access token. And then you copy paste that value into all of your future API requests, and then Domo knows who you are, and therefore will allow you to take actions using the APIs. Okay, so guys, please, for the love of all things, make sure to read the, where is the API documentation? I'm looking for the word authentication. Okay, look at API authentication for how to do it properly, or watch my tutorial channels because I've covered this before. In a nutshell, to use the public APIs, you would go to new client and you would pass in your the name of your client. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be ABC, whatever. And the application scope says what this client ID and secret should be allowed to do. Should it be allowed to manipulate data? Should it be allowed to manipulate buzz or create a workflow? What should it be allowed to do? You'll get a client ID and secret, which you'll use later. So step one in all of this, let me collapse this so it's out of the way. Step one on all of this is going to be to get your access token. So you'll hit api.domo.com, you'll ask for an OAuth token, and the scope is going to be, again, that action you want your access token to be able to take. So I'll pass in, under authorization, I'll pass in user ID and password as a client ID, or sorry, the username is my client ID, the password is the client secret, and you just send it to this location or this API, and it will give you your access token. You take that value that you get back and you save it somewhere because you're going to need it. Now, the thing about access tokens is that they have an expiration date, just like cookies on your browser, right? They'll expire after 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. Every system is different. So you can't just have this one access token and use it forever. And that's what I really like about Postman, is Postman will allow me to really easily say, hey, here's this API request. I've parameterized my client ID and secret. I can just run this and save this value. Or, cool thing I learned the other day, you can tell Postman after you run your request to just set the environment variable developer token to whatever you got back from your request. I mean, I don't even have to click the buttons anymore. It's automated. This is the coolest thing that I've discovered this week. So there you go. Access token, or sorry, the variable developer token now has my most recent access token. And I can now use that to create a data set. Now you'll notice me flipping between all of these different folders. One of the projects I've been working on is to just document the documented APIs, but also document the undocumented APIs that I use for my scripting. I would like to make this a community resource. If you guys want access to it, just hit me up in the dojo or in the Slack group, and we'll see what we can do for you. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and create that post request. Post against this API. Here's that same body I copied from developer.domo.com. For authorization, I've configured Postman to inherit authorization from my parent. But basically what you would do is you would type, just as it says in the documentation, authorization, bearer, and then your, whoop, not that, your Domo, your developer token, whatever that was. But that's all automated for me, so I'm not going to mess things up by putting that in there. Cool. I will go ahead and click send. And because I have a client ID, because I have a bearer token or developer token, and that developer token is tied to my client ID and secret, and my client ID and secret are tied to an instance of Domo, it knows where to send the request and where to create the data set. So I can go to Domo Dojo. If you don't know about Domo Dojo, another community resource that we had set up that basically creates a playground for users to kind of just play and explore different features of Domo. Some of the beta features that I've talked about in my channel are here as well. But here's that new data set we created. There's no data in it. It's got 0 rows, 0 columns. Nothing's been uploaded. Cool. I've created a data set. To upload a data set, I would go to developer.domo.com. I would follow the instructions for, is it updated data set? No. Import data. I'd follow the instructions for input data. So create a put request against this data set, or sorry, this URL. Set the content type to CSV, include that same developer token, and you should be off to the races. Did I set my data set ID? No, I didn't. Okay, so I just created a data set. I need to update my data set ID. I'm going to run my put command. Update method is replace. Here's my body. And for whatever reason, Postman just doesn't work. I haven't figured out how to get Postman to run this one request, which is annoying. But added bonus, if you're using Postman, you can click on the code tab and it will give you in a lot of different languages the code that's being executed in Postman. I actually have a user right now who was kind of messaging me and was like, hey, I can't get my code to run in PowerShell. And I said, well, if you can get it to run in Postman, you should be able to just copy paste your code. I'm going to do that using Python. So I'm going to come in here, copy. Where am I? Here? Nope. Here. Here's my Scratchpad. Replace the content there. The only thing I need to do is make sure that I have a good dataset ID because I don't think that's been updated. I should have closed all this shenanigans. Where am I? Create. Yep. Here's my dataset ID. I'll copy that and paste. Okay. So I'm going to send a payload of 2 columns and a new line, so 2 rows. And it's got the same auth token. Technically, this cookie is generated by Postman, but I don't need it, so I'm just going to prove the point, not include it. And let's go ahead and send. This is performing a replace command. I should be able to go into Domo. I've got 2 rows of data. Nice. I've got the content. This is a replace. This is standard, out of the box. This is how we expect Domo to behave. But just to prove the point, Nick was here. run. And again, because I'm doing replace, I expect there to only be 2 rows of data. Nick was here. All right. I can change my parameters to do an append. I can do an append. I'm sending 2 rows of data. There are already 2 rows of data up there. So I would expect, after I run this, I would expect there to be 4 rows. Plug in my laptop real quick. Come back to, where are we? Come back to Domo, 4 rows of data. Append, replace, standard Domo behavior, nothing terribly exciting, but we're using the public APIs. The API is documented under developer.domo.com. I showed you a little bit about the auth workflow. I showed you how if you're using Postman, you can copy paste your code out and really just get started, especially if you're new to Python or any other scripting languages. I think this is worth $1 million. The other $1 million are just access to this collection, which again includes the documented APIs as well as the undocumented APIs. So let's talk a little bit about some of the undocumented stuff. I can create the same workflow against my undocumented APIs. And we're going to talk about why you would want to do that as soon as I get through closing all of these open windows. Okay. First thing we have to do is we have to recognize that there's a different authentication method. Instead of going to api.domo.com, you're going to go to domodojo.domo.com or yourcompany.domo.com to hit the full authentication API. If you've ever seen this error message about full authentication in your API request, it's because you're using the wrong authentication method. Watch my videos. I've gone over it. In any case, you'll send your username and password as part of the body. I'm not going to show that here, but you send your post request and you get a session token back. And again, you can save. I love this about Postman. You can just set the session token variable as kind of a post execution step. Pretty good stuff. So let's come into our dataset APIs. And what we're going to do is we're going to see that there's actually 3 requests that we have to send to do the same thing that we did in the developer API in 1 step. You're like, Jay, why would I do 3 steps instead of 1? That's stupid. Stick with me. So in terms of process, I do like this because if you can understand the requests, you kind of understand what Domo's doing under the covers. Okay. So if in stage 1, I have to get an upload ID. I'll hit domojojo.domo.com dataset ID /uploads. The /uploads path, when I hit that, will send back an upload ID. So I'm going to save that as dataset upload ID. What that upload ID does is it says, hey, I'm creating a new version of my dataset, version 4. I'm going to start shoving data into it. And I can take 2 minutes to send the data, 0 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour. But as long as I hit this upload ID, I'm always sending data into the same version. Now, in terms of headers, the authentication is going to be Domo developer authentication. Sorry. The header would be Domo developer authentication, and you're going to pass your access token from the previous step. And as I say that out loud, I'm questioning myself. Is it? Sorry, I lied. It's xDomo authentication. Oof, embarrassing. Good thing I have. Good thing I have Postman. So you're going to send xDomo authentication, send your access token, and that's how you authenticate these requests. All right. In my body, I'm going to send action and append ID as null. Now, this is upload ID 4. I've got that going. The next step, stage 2, is going to be to send my CSV data. So in this request, I'm going to say hit upload ID 4 and send my data to part 2. Now, the parts allows me to send data to Domo in multiple chunks, multiple pieces. If I had a 1,000,000 row data set, it'd be much faster to send, 3,000,000 rows to part 1, 3,000,000 rows to part 2, 4,000,000 rows to part 3, right? So I can send data to part 1, part 2, part 3, doesn't really matter. And it will just get the data into Domo faster. You have the same authorization. And this time I'm going to say, this is the data that I want to send. So I'm going to go ahead and click my send request. It's a put command. Now, I currently have, 4 rows in Domo. If I go back to Domo, I don't have the new rows. I don't see J and Alexi. And that's because even though the data has been sent to Domo, it's still just in storage. It's kind of in this intermediate phase. I have to commit and index the data in order to see that. So what that means is I have to hit uploads, upload for, /commit. That /commit command will say, what do you want to do with this upload? I can append, or I can replace. And the index action will tell Domo to load the data into Adrenaline. Remember, Domo's divided into 2 major layers. One layer is the data storage layer, so like just CSV files. And the database layer is what I actually query when I'm building a beast mode or constructing cards or writing ETL. So the index command is what allows me to see the data in Domo. And because I did a replace command, I replaced the data set just 2 rows. Cool. So what did we learn? In step 1, we get an upload ID. Create a version or a place for me to send data to. I send that data and I can send it in multiple parts to allow the data to get into Domo faster. This is one of the reasons why this API workflow is faster than developer.domo.com. Is because of this multi-part workflow. Lastly, and most importantly, in order to see that data in Domo, I have to commit it, which says close the upload ID and index the data, load the data into Adrenaline. Cool. We've basically just recreated developer.domo.com. You're like, Jay, why would I ever do that? That took way too long. But it gets better. What I do have the ability to do with these private APIs is work with partitioning. Partitioning is a feature that's coming out in Magic 2.0. I've seen the beta. It's beautiful. This ability to write a Magic ETL data flow that partitions my data set. It will make recursive data flows largely superfluous. And we're very excited about that performance gain. But you still might have a need for partitioning. So for example, I'm working on a project where I have 5 or 6 different instances of Domo, and I want to combine data sets from 5 or 6 instances of Domo into one data set. So I'm going to use partitioning to solve that problem. Now, partitioning is going to use the exact same API /uploads for stage 1, but I'm going to add a parameter to restate a data tag. The data tag is the same thing as the partition ID. So typically when you think of partitioning, you'll say, hey, I want to upload a set of data for today. And it'll usually be today's date, 1/1/2015 or whatever. Just to prove the point, instead of putting in a date value, I'm just going to type in the value today, but I could just as easily type in the value ABC or some other random string for the partition tag. So I'm going to go ahead and post my request, no action, no append ID, and I'm going to get back that upload ID, right? Same step as the previous workflow. But now that I've included the tag restate data tag, Domo knows I'm planning to update the today partition. In stage 2, I'm going to go into my body, I'll send we are great, and I'm going to do a fresh upload today. So that's my body. Again, I'm hitting uploads, dataset upload ID, no reference to the partition tag, but I am going to send my data through the part 1 channel. Again, part 1 has nothing to do with partitions. It's a little confusing, but it's got nothing to do with the partition ID we just talked about. I'm going to go ahead and send that data. It says the data is processing. Now again, if I go to Domo, I will not see "we are great, fresh upload today." We don't see that data because I haven't committed it yet. So I still just have 2 rows. When I go to stage 3, now I'm going to commit the data. I'm going to tell it to load the data. I'm going to use an append action. My restate data tag is going to be the value today. And index true says load the data into Domo. So after I run this, I expect there to be 5 rows of data in my data set. I lied, 3. I can't count. I went from 2 rows to the 3rd row. Fresh upload today. What's pretty exciting is Domo has expanded the UI so that if your data set has partitions on it, you can click here and see, hey, I uploaded this partition at 134.29, and the partition was called today. Now that's good. What if I made a mistake? When I uploaded my data, I had some errors in it, and I had to re-upload the today partition. So it's going to have the same partition ID today, but I need to re-send that data. I'm going to run the full append pipeline. Did I save it? I didn't press the save button. Gosh darn it. Okay, let me run it again. And let's jump over here. It's going to show me that the update time changed. The partition is just called today, so there's only one partition. But in my data set, I'm going to see re-upload. My bad, I re-uploaded. So I've basically done what we do in recursive data flows. I replace the wrong data or the old data with some newer data. That's basically your recursive data flow pipeline right there. What I can also do is when it's time to upload the next set of data, tomorrow's data, I'll change my data set partition ID from today to tomorrow, or whatever the actual date value is. I'll change my body. Let me save it this time. Run my pipeline. And there's tomorrow's data. Okay, so in a nutshell, what we've just gone over in this last couple of minutes is we've gone through the same set of APIs, but this time, instead of just doing a straight append, we did an append with a partition tag, which allows me to replace recursive data flows. Domo has expanded some functionality here in terms of what I can do. I can list out all of my available partitions. So I can go to data sources, data set ID, /partition/list. And I can list out all of the uploaded partitions. Very exciting. Now, one thing I did stumble, or one place I did stumble, is if I uploaded a partition that I want to get rid of, theoretically, I can send delete, and I can delete the partition ID. But I'm not going to do that. Because if I delete the partition ID, for some reason the partition gets deleted, but the data doesn't get removed from Domo. So to remove data from Domo, you actually want to replace the partition with nothing. So I'm going to send nothing to tomorrow. Let's see if that works. Oh, it's closed. Let me run the whole upload pipeline again. Okay. So now I can see tomorrow has been removed. I'm down to 3 rows. But if I go to the partitions tab, tomorrow the partition still exists. The row count is just 0. So that's how you remove data um, from a partition, is you actually delete the data first. Or sorry, you don't delete the data. You send an empty data set to the tomorrow partition. So I send 0 rows to empty it out. If I actually wanted to remove the partition from the partition list, after I've emptied out the rows, I can go ahead and run the delete partition command. Now that I've run delete the partition called tomorrow, if I come back over here and refresh, that partition is now unlisted and the data is also gone. So much stuff. Was there anything else I needed to cover? I think that was it. Guys, I hope you found that useful. There's so many features in Domo that are very powerful and do a lot of good things, but it really helps if you take the time to kind of understand what's going on beneath the surface. It will help you troubleshoot problems as they come up and give you an idea of how Domo works under the covers. And then also kind of open up some new options. If you're like, oh, I don't have the Magic 2.0 plus partition beta, but I need to get started with partitioning. I've just told you this is how you go through that process. If you're using Adrenaline dataflows don't have partition support yet. You might want to be able to create historization. You may want to accumulate history on an Adrenaline dataflow. This is a mechanism that allows you to do that. So I hope you found that useful. If so, leave a like. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Somewhere in there, there's a button where you can donate to the cause and help me continue producing videos. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you guys later.